Okay, so we're going to do a deep dive today into a story that kind of felt like it was ripped right out of the headlines, like a Hollywood drama,
Yeah.
but quickly became a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
The Jussie Smollett case?
Absolutely.
You with me on this one?
Oh, totally. This is one of those cases that just grabs you. And
Yeah.
the more you learn, the more questions you have.
Exactly.
It's wild.
So we've got a ton of material to go through, like court documents and news articles,
Oh, yeah.
even some snippets of Smollett's own testimony,
Uh-huh.
and we're going to try to figure out what really happened here.
Yeah, let's get to the bottom of this.
For those who maybe need a quick refresher, Jussie Smollett was a star on that show, Empire.
Right.
And he said that he was attacked in Chicago back in 2019.
Yeah, and the details of this attack were really disturbing.
Yeah.
He said there were two masked men,
Right.
racial and homophobic slurs, a noose.
Mm-hmm.
He even said that they yelled, "MAGA country." It's also important to remember that all of this was happening when the social and political climate was
Oh, yeah, sure.
really intense.
It was a time of, like, a lot of political polarization.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hate crimes were, like, a big topic in the news.
Yeah, it was a major part of the national conversation.
So when this story broke, it felt
And
a
it's
lot...
huge. It was
Yeah.
like a lightning rod.
Totally.
Yeah, because it just tapped into all of these anxieties and tensions that were already there,
Uh-huh.
simmering in society.
Right, and I think that that's partly why the public reaction was so strong.
Exactly. People were outraged.
Yeah.
They wanted justice.
There were these huge rallies supporting Smollett.
Right.
Celebrities were speaking out using their platforms.
Yeah, they were using their voices to amplify his story.
Right, and the police started this massive investigation.
Oh, yeah, they put a lot of resources into it.
It seemed like everyone wanted these attackers found and brought to justice.
Uh-huh. But then
Things took a turn.
a wild turn.
It was a wild ride.
So as the police were investigating,
Mm-hmm.
they started finding some inconsistencies in Smollett's story.
Yeah, little things that didn't quite add up.
Yeah.
And these inconsistencies, they started to make people doubt the whole story.
I bet that was a big turning point for how the public felt.
It was massive.
Yeah.
You know, at first everyone was so sympathetic and supportive of Smollett.
Right.
But as more and more of these inconsistencies came out,
Yeah.
you could almost feel the tide turning.
Right.
People started wondering, like, wait a minute, what if this isn't what it seems?
Uh-huh. And then the police basically dropped a bombshell.
Yeah, it was a huge twist.
They said that they thought Smollett had actually orchestrated the whole attack,
Hmm.
that he had paid two brothers who were connected to Empire to stage the whole thing.
Like, hired them to fake the attack?
Yeah, and then
Okay.
details started coming out about the plan.
Yeah, like how they were supposed to stage it.
Right.
And that he had paid them.
It's crazy how that case went from being about a hate crime,
To being about a potential hoax.
which is arguably even more shocking.
Yeah.
And that's where the legal roller coaster ride really began.
Okay, so let's talk about that whole legal process.
Right.
So Smollett was charged with disorderly conduct for filing a false police report.
Right.
But then the Cook County State's Attorney's Office initially dropped those charges.
Yeah, which was unusual.
And then a special prosecutor was brought in.
Right, and that's an important point.
Yeah.
That happens when there's a potential conflict of interest,
Uh-huh.
or if there's concern that the regular prosecutors might not be impartial.
Right. Like in this case, there were questions about whether the Cook County State's attorney had any connections to people close to Smollett.
Exactly. So they wanted to make sure the process was fair and unbiased.
So the special prosecutor was supposed to
Yeah, make sure everything was above board,
Uh-huh.
and they decided to move forward with the case.
Okay. And Smollett ended up being convicted
Mm-hmm.
on 5 felony counts of disorderly conduct. He was sentenced to jail time probation, and he had to pay restitution.
But he kept saying he was innocent
The whole time.
the entire time.
Wow. And then he appealed the conviction.
Right.
And in 2023, the Illinois Supreme Court actually overturned his conviction,
Yeah.
which was a surprise to a lot of people.
It was a big twist in the case.
So how does that happen?
Well, the Supreme Court's decision wasn't about whether or not they thought Smollett was actually guilty.
Oh.
It was about a procedural issue
Uh-huh.
with the appointment of the special prosecutor.
Got it.
They said that the special prosecutor wasn't appointed properly.
Ugh.
So the whole prosecution was basically invalid.
Wow.
It's a really interesting example of how legal technicalities
Yeah.
can have a huge impact on a case.
So we have this really complex legal story, but the main question is still,
What really happened that night?
yeah, what actually happened?
Because in his testimony, Smollett insisted that he was the victim of a real attack. But then you have the two brothers who said that Smollett hired them
Yeah.
to fake the whole thing.
It's hard to know what to believe.
It really is. It's hard to reconcile those two versions of events.
And then there's the question of motive.
Right, like why?
Yeah, if he did do it, why would he stage something like this?
The prosecution's theory was that he was unhappy with his salary on Empire
Okay.
and that he wanted to raise his profile and maybe get a better deal.
Okay.
But the defense argued that that didn't make sense.
Right.
They said Smollett was already successful and had a strong following.
Yeah.
They said that he was the victim of a rush to judgment and that public pressure and the media kind of overshadowed the search for the truth.
So where does that leave us?
Well, we've got this legal battle,
Right.
these conflicting stories,
Yeah.
and a lot of unanswered questions.
What do you think is the most important thing for our listener to take away from all of this?
I think this case shows us that the truth can be really hard to find,
Yeah.
even when we have access to a lot of information. Right.
We have to be careful about making judgments based on incomplete stories or just because we feel strongly about something.
Yeah.
This case also shows how important due process is and how legal technicalities can really change the outcome of a case.
It makes you think about how we as a society decide what to believe,
Yeah.
especially in big cases like this.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think stands out to you the most about this case? What do you find the most compelling?
That's a good question.
This case is legally closed,
Yeah.
but I think people are going to keep talking about it and questioning what happened.
Oh, absolutely. The doubts and the conversations are going to continue.
For sure.
I mean, we went through this whole investigation and trial and appeals,
Yeah.
but I think we're all left with this feeling that we might never really know what happened that night in Chicago.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this case so fascinating and also so unsettling.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's crazy.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
Yeah, you too. This was a good one. Until next time.
See ya. Bye.